The first thing Micah Ellery heard after the lock clicked was laughter. Not surprised laughter. Not nervous laughter. The kind people made when they already knew the punchline and were waiting for him to realize it was him. Micah turned toward the door, still holding the small gift box he had spent 3 nights making for his boyfriend's birthday. "Very funny," he called, forcing a smile into his voice. Nobody unlocked it. Behind him, 4 of his boyfriend's friends lounged around the private room with half-empty drinks in their hands. Grinning like this was entertainment. Then Micah saw the phone propped against an ice bucket, camera pointed directly at him. His stomach dropped. He had spent 11 months convincing himself that love meant being patient, easygoing, impossible to embarrass. Tonight, apparently, his boyfriend had decided to test exactly how much humiliation Micah could swallow before he finally broke. "Guys," Micah said quietly. "Open the door." One of them laughed. "Relax. It's his birthday." As if that explained anything. As if loving someone meant surrendering the right to say no. Micah looked again at the phone. A red recording light blinked back at him. That changed everything. He set the gift down. His hands wanted to shake, so he gave them a job. Micah was 28, a freelance event lighting designer who made a living walking into chaotic rooms and finding whatever everyone else had missed. Bad wiring. Wrong angles. Emergency exits hidden behind decorative panels. He had spent the afternoon fixing this party's lighting after a contractor overloaded one of the circuits, while his boyfriend had kissed his cheek and called him a lifesaver. Now that same man had locked him in a room for laughs. Micah scanned the walls. Private lounge. Hotel ballroom. No windows. One public entrance. But venues like this needed staff access. His eyes landed on a heavy velvet curtain that stopped 6 inches short of the floor. Behind it, barely visible, was the metal edge of another door. "Where are you going?" someone asked. Micah ignored him. He pulled the curtain aside and found a narrow service door with a simple latch. Relief hit so sharply he almost laughed. Of course. His boyfriend knew Micah hated being the center of attention. He apparently didn't know Micah's job very well. 30 seconds later, Micah stepped into a dim service corridor and pulled the door shut behind him. No cheering. No confrontation. Just escape. For 3 beautiful seconds, he could breathe again. Then voices carried through the ballroom door ahead. His boyfriend's voice was unmistakable. "Did you get enough footage?" Micah stopped. Another man chuckled. "He got out early. Doesn't matter. We have enough for the finale." Micah's fingers went cold. "Finale? Put it in after the toast," his boyfriend said. "Everybody's going to lose it when they see his face." The corridor seemed to tilt. This had not been a stupid, spontaneous prank fueled by alcohol. The phone had been waiting. The room had been chosen. And whatever humiliation Micah had escaped was supposed to follow him into a ballroom full of people. He thought about the gift still sitting inside that room. About 11 months of apologies he had made for being too sensitive, too quiet, too serious. About every time his boyfriend had hurt him, and somehow Micah had ended up comforting him afterward. Something inside him went very still. "No," Micah whispered. "Not tonight." He turned toward the service elevator and nearly collided with a man coming around the corner. Micah jerked backward. The stranger immediately stopped too, then did something Micah wasn't expecting. He stepped away, gave Micah space. "Are you supposed to be back here?" he asked. His voice was calm, not accusing. Micah recognized him vaguely as Grant Sutter, one of the hotel's managing partners. That meant authority, security, questions Micah absolutely did not have the strength to answer. "I'm leaving," Micah said. Grant's gaze dropped briefly to Micah's shaking hand, then to the service door behind him. He didn't grab Micah, didn't block the elevator. He simply reached past him, pressed the call button, and said, "Okay." Micah stared. "Okay. If you want to leave, I'm not stopping you." The elevator chimed. Its doors opened. Micah should have stepped inside. Instead, he remembered his phone, his wallet, his bag. Everything was still in the ballroom. Grant noticed his hesitation. "Something you need?" Micah swallowed. Saying it aloud made the humiliation real, but silence had protected the wrong person long enough. "My boyfriend locked me in that room with his drunk friends." Grant's expression changed, not dramatically, just enough for all the casual distance to disappear. "Do you want security?" "No," Micah surprised himself with how quickly he answered. "I want my things back." For the first time that night, someone looked at him without amusement or pity. Grant nodded once. "Then let's get your things." Micah glanced toward the ballroom door, where the laughter continued on the other side. 5 minutes ago, he had been trapped behind a locked door, wondering how much dignity he could lose before someone decided the joke was over. Now the door was in front of him, and for once, he was choosing whether to walk through it. Grant didn't move ahead of him. He waited, and somehow, that made Micah brave enough to reach for the handle. Micah kept his hand on the ballroom door, but Grant did not reach around him to open it. That small restraint unsettled him almost as much as the kindness. Men like Grant Sutter were supposed to take control. Micah had heard his name before tonight, usually attached to words like demanding, impossible, and expensive. 20 minutes earlier, Micah had watched a catering supervisor straighten his jacket when Grant crossed the ballroom. Now the same man was standing quietly in a service corridor, waiting for Micah to decide what happened next. "You do not have to come with me," Micah said. "I know." "Then why are you?" Grant glanced at the door. "Because someone used my hotel to lock a guest in a room and record him without his agreement." His jaw tightened. "That makes it my problem. Not me," Micah noticed. "The situation. Somehow, that distinction made accepting help easier." He opened the door. Music and conversation rushed over them. The ballroom looked exactly as it had before, which felt insulting. Gold light washed over white tablecloths. People laughed beneath crystal chandeliers. Someone carried a birthday cake toward the center of the room. Micah had expected humiliation to leave a visible stain. Apparently the world could keep looking beautiful while your relationship quietly collapsed inside it. Then his boyfriend spotted him. The smile vanished. "Micah, there you are." He crossed the room quickly. "How did you get out?" "Not are you okay?" "Not I am sorry." "How did you get out?" Micah felt something cold settle into place. "Service door." His boyfriend laughed too quickly. "Of course you found that. Look, everybody had too much to drink. It was stupid. Can we not make this dramatic?" Grant remained 2 steps behind Micah, silent. His boyfriend finally noticed him. Color drained from his face. "Mr. Sutter." Grant gave a brief nod. That was all it took. A nearby banquet captain immediately approached. "Everything all right, Mr. Sutter?" "For now," Grant said. "Please stay available." The captain nodded and moved away without another question. Micah looked at Grant differently. He had known Grant had authority. He had not understood until that moment how little effort Grant needed to use it. His boyfriend understood too. His shoulders lowered. His voice softened. "This is a private party. We can handle this ourselves." "Then handle it," Grant said. "Start by giving him his belongings." Micah almost turned toward him. There was no threat in Grant's voice. No performance. He simply said it like Micah getting his own property back was the most obvious thing in the world. His boyfriend stared at him, then at Micah. "Your stuff is at our table." "I know." Micah walked past him. Grant followed, but never close enough to crowd him. At the table, Micah found his phone beneath a folded napkin, his wallet inside his messenger bag, and his jacket draped over a chair. His hands were steadier now. Then he saw the small navy gift box. Someone had brought it out of the lounge. His boyfriend picked it up and offered it to him with a strained smile. "Can we reset? You came here for my birthday. I screwed up. Fine. Give me my present. We have a drink, and tomorrow you can tell me how terrible I am." A few people nearby laughed uncertainly. There it was again. Turn it into a joke. Make Micah smile. Make Micah responsible for restoring the room. He stared at the box. Inside was a handmade watch case lined with dark green suede because his boyfriend once complained that hotel nightstands scratched his watches. Micah had measured it twice. Redone one corner because it was slightly uneven. Stayed awake until 2 in the morning finishing it. "No," Micah said. The laughter died. "What?" I said no. Micah took the box from his hand, then placed it back on the table. "Actually, keep it. I made it for the person I thought you were." His boyfriend's face hardened. "You are seriously doing this in front of everyone?" Micah nearly apologized. The reflex rose automatically, polished by 11 months of practice. Then Grant did something strange. He stepped sideways. Not in front of Micah. Beside him. A quiet movement that said he was there without suggesting Micah could not stand alone. The apology disappeared from Micah's tongue. "You made it public when you set up a camera," he said. His boyfriend glanced around. There was no plan to do anything with that footage. Micah's heart kicked hard. "That is not what I heard." Silence. Grant's eyes shifted to him. "What did you hear?" Micah hesitated, then told him. "Enough footage. The finale. After the toast." Grant did not interrupt. When Micah finished, His expression had become frighteningly calm. He looked toward the audiovisual booth at the back of the ballroom. "Did you design the lighting setup tonight?" he asked Micah unexpectedly. "I fixed it. The west circuit was overloaded. You are the reason we did not lose half the room before dinner?" Micah blinked. "I suppose." Grant looked directly at him. "My staff told me an outside designer caught it in under 5 minutes. I was looking for you earlier to thank you." Something inside Micah cracked, but gently this time. Grant had noticed him before the locked room, before the shaking hands, before Micah became someone who needed help. "Thank you," Micah said, almost embarrassed by how much those 2 words meant. Grant nodded toward the audiovisual booth. "Now I would like your help with something else." "What?" "You heard them discussing a video scheduled for the finale. This is my venue, and that system belongs to my hotel." His gaze moved briefly to Micah's boyfriend, then returned to Micah. "If you want to leave, I will have your car brought around. If you want to know whether what you heard was real, I can check the hotel equipment and event schedule." Micah looked toward the exit. 10 minutes ago, escape had been everything he wanted. Now he wanted something else more. The truth. "Check it," he said. Grant held his gaze for one quiet second. "All right." Then he turned toward the audiovisual booth, and Micah made a decision that surprised even him. He followed. The audiovisual booth was smaller than Micah expected. A few monitors, a control panel, and a tired-looking technician who immediately stood straighter when Grant Sutter entered. That was the first time Micah truly understood the difference between having influence and needing to prove it. Grant did not raise his voice. He did not threaten anyone. He simply asked questions, and people answered. "Show me the event schedule," Grant said. The technician pulled up the timeline. Micah stood beside the screen, watching every detail. The more he looked, the more familiar everything became. The lighting cues, the timing, the placement of the cameras. "Wait," Micah said. The technician paused. This sequence was not part of the original design. Grant looked at him. "How do you know?" Micah pointed to the screen. "Because the lighting change here would have ruined the atmosphere during the toast. Whoever added this was not trying to improve the event. They were creating a moment." The technician checked the notes. His expression changed. There was a late request added from the host account. Micah already knew whose account it was. His boyfriend's. The room went quiet. A few minutes earlier, Micah had been trying to convince himself he was overreacting. Now the evidence was sitting in front of him. Grant looked at the screen, then at Micah. But what surprised Micah was not anger. It was respect. "You caught that from a timeline?" Grant asked. Micah shrugged slightly. "It is my job. Most people would have been focused on getting revenge." Micah looked away. "I am not interested in revenge." That answer seemed to stay with Grant. "What are you interested in?" Micah thought about it. Not feeling foolish for trusting someone. For a moment, the powerful hotel executive disappeared. There was only a man who understood that sentence. Grant looked down at the folder in his hand, and Micah noticed something he had not seen before. A heavy silver ring with an unusual design rested beside the papers. It was not flashy. It looked old, almost like something connected to a family history rather than a business image. Grant noticed him looking and quietly closed the folder. "Sorry," Micah said. "I was not trying to be nosy." "You were not." Grant paused. "It is just something I usually keep private." That answer made Micah curious, but he did not ask. For some reason, respecting the boundary felt more important. The technician confirmed the video had not played yet. Grant instructed him to disable the scheduled playback and preserve the event records. Then he turned to Micah. "You should go home." Micah almost laughed. "That is probably the smartest thing anyone has said to me tonight." Grant nodded. "I mean it. You do not owe anyone another explanation." But before Micah could leave, the ballroom doors opened again. Several guests were gathering near the entrance for the birthday toast. A few of them recognized Micah. One whispered something to another. The uncomfortable looks started immediately. Micah felt the old instinct return. Make yourself smaller. Avoid attention. Leave before anyone judges you. Then one of the event coordinators approached. "Mr. Sutter, there is a problem with the lighting setup for the toast." Grant looked at Micah. "Can you fix it?" The question surprised him. Not "do you want to help?" Not "can you do this because I need you?" Just a professional question based on trust. Micah looked toward the ballroom. "I can." Together they walked back inside. A few minutes later, several staff members watched as Micah adjusted the lighting controls and restored the warm atmosphere around the stage. The same people who had barely noticed him earlier were now asking him how he solved the problem so quickly. One guest who had laughed near the lounge earlier approached. You designed this? Micah nodded. Most of it. The guest looked impressed. It is beautiful. It was a simple compliment. But after the night he had been having, it felt strangely powerful. Grant stood nearby, watching quietly. He could have taken credit. He could have introduced Micah as someone he had helped. Instead, when another guest asked who was responsible for the room design, Grant answered immediately. Micah Ellery. Just his name. No explanation. No connection to Grant's reputation. No suggestion that Micah mattered because Grant approved of him. He mattered because he earned it. Something shifted inside Micah. For the first time that night, he was not the person everyone was discussing. He was the person people were recognizing. Later, when the crowd moved back toward the toast, Grant handed Micah his coat. You did not have to do that, Micah said. Fix the lighting? Grant asked. No. Stand beside me. Grant looked genuinely confused. Why would I not? Micah did not have an answer. He was used to people helping only when they wanted something in return. Grant seemed different. More complicated. More human. Then Micah's phone vibrated. A message appeared from an unknown number. His face changed as he read it. Grant noticed immediately. Is something wrong? Micah looked at the screen again. It was a message from the event organizer connected to his boyfriend's group. The party was not over. They wanted a private conversation before the night ended. Micah felt the fragile calm disappear. Grant saw the hesitation in his eyes. You do not have to handle this alone. Micah looked at him. A few hours ago, that sentence would have sounded like pity. Now it sounded like a choice. Micah slipped the phone into his pocket. I think I want to know what they are going to say. Grant studied him for a moment, then nodded. Then I will stay close. And for the first time all night, Micah believed someone when they said they would not leave. Micah thought leaving the ballroom would make the night quieter. He was wrong. The moment he stepped into the private conference room with Grant, he realized the problem had followed him. His boyfriend was already there with two friends from the party, wearing the same confident expression he had used all night. The expression of someone who believed he could explain everything away. I think we need to clear up a misunderstanding, his boyfriend said. Micah almost smiled at the word. Misunderstanding. A small word for a locked door. A hidden camera. A plan to turn his embarrassment into entertainment. Across the room, one of the friends crossed his arms. Honestly, Micah, everyone was just having fun. You always take things so seriously. There it was. The sentence Micah had heard 100 times in different forms. Too sensitive. Too serious. Too difficult. He looked down for a moment, feeling the old instinct to defend himself by apologizing. Then he noticed Grant standing beside the window. Silent. Watching. Not controlling the conversation. Not interrupting. Just there. His presence reminded Micah that he did not have to shrink himself to make other people comfortable. Fun is supposed to include everyone, Micah said. His voice was calmer than he expected. Not one person being embarrassed while everyone else laughs. His boyfriend shook his head. You are making this bigger than it is. Grant finally spoke. No. The room went quiet. It was only one word, but everyone listened. Grant walked toward the table where the event documents were placed. A guest was placed in a locked room without consent. A recording device was prepared. An unauthorized playback request was added to my hotel system. He looked at the group. That is not a misunderstanding. His tone was not angry. That made it worse. Grant was the kind of man who could make a room go silent without raising his voice. One of the friends tried to laugh it off. Mr. Sutter, come on. This was between a couple. Grant looked at him. Then why did you involve an audience? Nobody answered. Micah noticed something then. Grant treated everyone else like a business problem to solve. Efficient, distant, unmoved. But when he looked at Micah, the sharpness disappeared. Not completely. Grant was still Grant. But there was something softer underneath. Something only Micah seemed to receive. His boyfriend noticed too. Are you seriously taking his side? He asked. Grant did not hesitate. I am standing with the person telling the truth. That sentence landed harder than Micah expected. Not because Grant defended him. Because Grant believed him. Later, when the meeting ended and the others left, Micah stood near the hallway outside the conference room, exhausted. You did not have to say all that, he told Grant. Yes, I did. Micah looked at him. Grant seemed almost surprised by his own answer. After a moment, he corrected himself. I chose to. The difference mattered. Micah had spent so long with someone who made every kindness feel like a debt. Grant made support feel like respect. They walked through the quiet hotel corridor together. For a while, neither spoke. Then Micah noticed Grant remove his jacket and place it over the back of a chair. The small action revealed something strange. The expensive suit, the perfect image, the reputation everyone whispered about. It was all armor. Do people always expect you to fix everything? Micah asked. Grant looked at him. Usually. And do you? Grant gave a small, humorless smile. Usually. Micah understood that answer more than he wanted to admit. Maybe that is why you looked so surprised when I fixed the lighting. Grant stopped walking. What do you mean? You are used to being the person who saves the situation, not the person who notices someone else already saved it. For the first time, Grant looked caught off guard. Not offended. Just seen. Before he could answer, Micah's phone rang. It was his boyfriend again. Micah almost ignored it, but Grant noticed the hesitation. You do not have to answer. Micah looked at the screen. I know. He answered anyway. The voice on the other end was different this time. Less confident. More careful. Micah, wait. Before you do anything, you need to understand something. There is a reason tonight happened. Micah felt his stomach tighten. What reason? A pause. Because someone told me you were planning to leave me after the party. Micah frowned. What? I thought I was giving you a reason to stay. The excuse was so impossible that for a second Micah did not know how to respond. Then he understood. The prank was not only about humor. It was about control. About making Micah prove he cared by accepting something cruel. Grant watched his expression change. He did not ask what was said. He simply waited. When the call ended, Micah lowered the phone slowly. He thinks this was a way to save the relationship. Grant's expression hardened. That is not how you save something. Micah looked at him. The hallway was empty. The party continued somewhere far away, but it felt like another world. Why are you still here, Grant? He asked quietly. The problem is not your responsibility anymore. Grant looked at him for a long moment. I know. Another pause. I am still here anyway. Micah felt something shift. Not love. Not yet. Something smaller. Something more dangerous. Trust. But before either of them could say anything else, Grant's phone lit up with a message. His expression changed as he read it. What is it? Micah asked. Grant looked back toward the ballroom. The video file was copied before we disabled the system. The calm in Grant's face remained, but Micah saw the concern underneath. The problem was no longer just a ruined birthday. Someone had already taken the moment they created and moved it somewhere else. And this time, escaping the room would not be enough. The message on Grant's phone changed the atmosphere instantly. A few seconds earlier, the hallway had felt like the first quiet place Micah had found all night. A place where he could breathe. A place where he was starting to believe that maybe one person could actually stand beside him without expecting anything in return. Then Grant looked at the screen, and that calm disappeared. The file was copied before we stopped it, Grant said. Someone moved it outside the hotel system. Micah watched his expression carefully. Grant was still composed, but Micah had learned enough about him to notice the small changes. The tighter jaw, the way his hand closed around the phone, the way he looked less like a businessman handling a problem and more like someone recognizing a familiar threat. You knew this could happen, Micah said. Grant did not answer immediately. That pause was enough. Micah felt his chest tighten. Grant, I knew it was possible. Possible, Micah repeated. You mean you knew someone might have access to something like this? Grant looked away for half a second. That was the first time Micah saw hesitation from him. Not confidence. Not control. Hesitation. There is something I should have told you. Those words landed harder than Micah expected. Not because Grant had a secret. Everyone had secrets. But because Grant had been the one person tonight who made Micah feel safe enough to lower his guard. What is it? Micah asked. Grant took a breath. This hotel is not just a property I manage. He reached into the folder he had been carrying and opened it. Inside were documents with a name Micah recognized from business news. Sutter Holdings. A family company known across the country. The kind of company people mentioned when talking about private investments, luxury developments, and powerful families. Grant was not simply the managing partner of the hotel. He was the majority owner. The person whose decisions affected everything in the building. Micah stared at him. You are the owner. Grant nodded. Yes. And you did not think that was important? I thought it would change the way you saw me. Micah looked away. Maybe because it does. The words came out sharper than he intended. Grant accepted them. He did not defend himself immediately. I met people my entire life who treated me differently after they learned my name. Some wanted something from me. Some were afraid of me. I wanted one person to talk to me without seeing a company behind me. Micah understood the feeling, more than he wanted to admit. But understanding did not erase the hurt. You let me believe you were just a person helping me. Grant's voice softened. I was a person helping you. Micah looked back at him. That is not the point. Silence filled the hallway. The painful part was not that Grant was wealthy. It was not that he had influence. It was that Micah had trusted him because Grant seemed different from everyone else. And now he wondered if he had only seen another carefully managed image. Was any of tonight real? Micah asked. Grant's expression changed immediately. Micah, no, I need to know. His voice was quiet, but steady. When you stood beside me in that ballroom, when you told people my name, when you said you noticed my work before you noticed my problem, was that real? Or was it just you being the man who fixes situations? Grant looked genuinely hurt. Not angry. Hurt. It was real. Then why hide something that big? Grant had no easy answer. That was what made it worse. Because I was afraid. Micah almost laughed. You? Grant looked down. Yes. I know that sounds ridiculous. For the first time, Micah saw the weakness behind the reputation. Grant Sutter, the man everyone listened to, was afraid of being valued for the wrong reasons. My entire life, people have decided who I am before they know me, Grant said. I thought if I told you everything immediately, you would only see the name. Micah's expression softened for a moment. Then the doubt returned. You should have trusted me enough to choose. That sentence affected Grant more than any accusation could have. Because Micah was right. The choice had been taken from him. The same thing Micah had suffered all night had happened again in a different form. Someone had decided what he could handle. Someone had hidden the truth because they thought they knew better. Grant stepped closer, then stopped. He did not reach for Micah. He respected the distance. You are right, Grant said quietly. I should have told you. Micah looked at him. Part of him wanted to believe that apology. Another part remembered the locked room, the hidden camera, the feeling of discovering the truth too late. I need some time. Grant nodded. I understand. The answer should have made Micah feel better. Instead, it made the distance feel more real. Because Grant did not fight for control. He simply accepted Micah's choice. And somehow that made leaving harder. Before Micah walked away, Grant spoke once more. For what it is worth, the only reason I am worried about that file is not my reputation. Micah stopped. Then what? Grant looked at him. Yours. Micah did not know what to say. Because he believed him. That was the problem. He believed him enough for it to hurt. As Micah walked toward the elevator, the night felt different again. He had escaped one person who turned his trust into a joke. Now he had to decide whether the person who protected him had also taken something from him. Behind him, Grant remained in the hallway, watching the elevator doors close. For the first time in years, he had the power to fix a problem. And for the first time, he knew fixing it was not enough. He had to earn the trust he had almost lost. For the first time in years, Grant Sutter had no solution ready. No meeting to schedule. No contract to negotiate. No problem he could solve with a phone call and a signature. He had watched Micah walk away from the elevator, and he had let him. Because forcing someone to stay was the exact thing he promised himself he would never become. 3 days passed before Micah saw Grant again. Not at a business meeting. Not at the hotel. At a small coffee shop near the design studio where Micah worked. Rain tapped against the windows, turning the city outside into a blur of gray and silver. Micah almost missed him. Grant sat alone in the corner, without his usual suit jacket, without the group of assistants and constant notifications that seemed to follow him everywhere. He looked less like the owner of a luxury hotel chain and more like a tired man who had forgotten what resting felt like. Micah considered leaving. He had every reason to. But then he noticed something. Grant was not waiting for him. He was not trying to create another perfect moment. He was simply there. Micah ordered his coffee and sat at another table. A few minutes later, Grant noticed him. Their eyes met. Neither smiled. Neither looked away. Finally, Grant spoke. I did not come here to ask you to forgive me. Micah looked at him. Good. A small, surprised expression crossed Grant's face. Good. Because I am not ready. Grant nodded. That is fair. The simple acceptance caught Micah off guard. He expected an argument. A reason. A carefully prepared explanation. Instead, Grant accepted the boundary. That was the first thing that began to change. Over the next week, Grant did not chase Micah. He did something harder. He showed up consistently without demanding anything in return. When Micah's design equipment malfunctioned before a client presentation, Grant did not send someone to fix it. He asked if Micah wanted help. When Micah said yes, Grant stayed late carrying boxes, organizing cables, and listening while Micah explained why every small lighting choice mattered. It was the first time Micah saw Grant in a place where he had no advantage. Grant did not know how to create beauty. He only knew how to protect the people who did. One evening, after finishing the project, they stood outside the studio as rain began falling harder. Micah looked at Grant's expensive car waiting at the curb. "You can go," Micah said. "You have probably already spent too much time helping me." Grant looked at the rain, then back at him. "I do not measure time that way anymore." Micah frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" Grant was quiet for a moment. Then he answered, "It means I spent most of my life believing everything had to be useful. Every relationship, every conversation, every decision." He looked down at the wet sidewalk. "My family built an empire by never showing weakness. I learned early that if people saw the person behind the name, they would either use him or leave him." Micah's expression softened. This was not the confident man from the ballroom. This was someone who had spent years hiding behind the same walls Micah had just escaped from. "So you thought hiding the truth would protect you?" Micah said. Grant nodded. "Yes." A pause. "But I did not realize it would make you feel like you had no choice." That sentence stayed with Micah, because Grant finally understood the real wound. Not the money, not the company, the choice. "I am still angry," Micah admitted. "I know, and I still do not completely trust you." Grant looked at him. "I know that too." Micah waited for disappointment. There was none. "But I am trying to understand," he continued. "Not because what you did was okay. It was not. But because I think you were afraid, not trying to hurt me." Something changed in Grant's expression. A small crack in the control he always carried. "Thank you." The words were quiet, almost unfamiliar coming from him. Then the moment was interrupted by Micah's phone. A notification appeared. The copied video had been posted to a private online group connected to the party guests. Micah's face went pale. The fear returned instantly. The same fear from the locked room. But this time, something was different. Before Micah could say anything, Grant stepped beside him. Not in front of him. Beside him. "We handle this together," Grant said. Micah looked at him. "Together?" Grant nodded. "Only if you want me there." That mattered. Because this time, Grant was not deciding for him. He was offering a choice. Micah looked at the screen again, then at Grant. The problem was not gone. The humiliation they had tried to create still existed somewhere outside these walls. But for the first time since the nightmare began, Micah did not feel like he was standing alone. "Okay," Micah said quietly. "Together." Grant exhaled, almost like he had been holding that breath for days. But before they could make a plan, another message appeared. This time it was not from the party group. It was from someone who had access to the original event files. Someone who knew exactly what had happened that night. And the message contained only one sentence. "You both need to see what was left out of the recording." The message led them to a private server containing the original event files. Micah stared at the screen while Grant reviewed every detail. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The missing piece was not hidden in the video. It was hidden in what came before it. The person who uploaded the footage had also uploaded a series of messages between Micah and Grant. Except they were incomplete. Cut. Rearranged. Made to look like something they were not. One screenshot showed Micah saying, "I need someone powerful on my side." Another showed Grant saying, "Keep him close until this situation is handled." Without context, it looked terrible. It looked like a deal. Like Micah had been rescued because he was useful. Like Grant had protected him because he wanted control. Micah felt the same cold feeling return. The feeling of standing in a room where everyone already believed the worst about him. "No," he whispered. Grant looked at him immediately. "Micah." But Micah stepped back. Not because he believed the messages. Because he knew how easily people could believe them. He had spent his whole life being the person who was misunderstood because nobody waited long enough to know the truth. "This is what they wanted," Micah said quietly. Grant looked at the screen. "They want people to think you used me." Micah laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "And maybe they will." "They will not." "How do you know?" Micah asked. The question stopped Grant. "Because you know how people see you, Grant. They see a rich man and a designer nobody has heard of. They do not see two equal people standing together. They see a story that makes sense to them." Grant had no immediate answer. That silence hurt more than Micah expected. A few days ago, Silence from Grant had felt safe. Now it felt like distance. The next morning, the edited screenshots spread through a small business network connected to the hotel. By afternoon, people were discussing the situation online. Not the locked room. Not the planned humiliation. The news story was simpler. Micah Ellery had attached himself to a powerful man after a bad breakup. Micah had used Grant's influence to protect his own reputation. The truth had become too complicated, so people chose the version that was easiest to believe. Micah arrived at the hotel for a scheduled meeting about the copied footage. The moment he entered the lobby, conversation stopped. He saw the looks, the whispers. The same feeling as the locked room returned, except this time there was no door he could escape through. A senior executive approached Grant. "We need to discuss the appearance of this situation." Appearance. Another small word that could destroy someone. "Your reputation is one thing," the executive continued. "But if this designer is connected to the company, people will question the hotel's judgment." Micah felt the words before he heard them completely. Connected to the company. Not a person. A risk. A problem. He looked at Grant. This was the moment. That mattered. The moment where Grant could choose him or choose the easier path. Grant remained silent. Not because he did not care. Not because he had changed his mind. He was listening, gathering facts, trying to understand every consequence before speaking. But Micah did not know that. All he saw was hesitation. And hesitation felt painfully familiar. His boyfriend had hesitated too. Every time Micah needed someone to say, "I believe you," there had been an explanation instead. "Micah," Grant finally said. But Micah shook his head. "Do not." His voice was quiet. "Please do not tell me you are handling it." Grant stopped. Micah looked at the floor, fighting to keep his expression steady. "I thought you were different because you gave me a choice." A pause. "But right now, I feel like I am waiting to find out if you are choosing me or protecting yourself." The words affected Grant immediately. He wanted to answer. Micah could see it. But before Grant could speak, another employee entered the lobby carrying printed documents. "Mr. Sutter, we found something else." Everyone turned. The papers were placed on the table. The first page showed the edited messages. The second page showed the original conversation. Micah looked down. The truth was there. But before anyone could read it, the executive picked up the papers. "This should be handled privately." Micah stared. Even now, the truth was being moved away from the people who needed to see it. Grant's hand tightened slightly. His eyes changed. The calm businessman was still there, but something deeper appeared. Anger. Not loud anger. Not reckless anger. The kind that came from someone realizing a line had been crossed. But Micah was already stepping away. He had spent too long hoping someone would choose him before he had to ask. He could not survive another moment of waiting. "I need to go," Micah said. Grant looked at him. For 1 second, everything between them was there. The trust they had rebuilt. The small moments. The quiet understanding. Then Micah turned and walked toward the exit. The worst part was not the rumors. It was not the screenshots. It was the fear that maybe he had finally found someone who saw him clearly, only to discover that when the world turned against him, he still had to stand alone. Behind him, Grant stayed silent. But this time, it was not because he had nothing to say. It was because he was making a decision that would change everything. And Micah did not know whether that decision would bring him back or finally prove his fears were right. Micah expected the worst when he returned to the hotel. He expected whispers, judgment, another room full of people deciding who he was before he had a chance to speak. But when he stepped into the main conference hall, something felt different. The room was full. Executives, staff members, and several guests from the birthday event were gathered together. At the front stood Grant, not behind a desk, not protected by assistants, standing in the same place where Micah had once felt invisible. Micah stopped near the entrance. Grant looked toward him immediately. For 1 second, neither man moved. Then Grant turned back to the room. "Before anyone makes another decision about Micah Ellery, there is something everyone needs to see." The screen behind him turned on. The first image was the edited message thread that had spread online. Then the original conversation appeared beside it. The difference was immediate. The missing lines changed everything. The message where Micah appeared to be asking for influence was actually a conversation about leaving the situation safely. The message where Grant appeared to be using him was part of a discussion about protecting Micah's privacy after the party incident. The room became quiet. Grant continued. Someone removed the parts that showed context. They did not reveal the truth. They created a story. He looked toward Micah's former boyfriend, and they used that story to shift attention away from what actually happened that night. The man who had organized the prank immediately stepped forward. This is ridiculous. You are only defending him because you have some personal connection. Grant did not react. He simply pressed another button. The screen changed. Event records appeared. Access logs. The original request for the private room recording. The scheduled playback request. The account information connected to the changes. Every piece had a source. Every piece had a reason. The hotel system recorded the timeline, Grant said. The records were created before Micah ever spoke to me. Before he knew my name. Before he had any reason to expect my help. That was the moment the room understood. Micah had not found Grant and used him. Grant had noticed Micah before anyone knew there was a problem. One of the executives looked uncomfortable. Why did you not release this information earlier? Grant was silent for a moment. Then he answered honestly. Because I was trying to protect Micah from becoming another public spectacle. He looked toward Micah. And because I made the mistake of thinking I could decide what protection looked like without asking him. Micah felt the words more deeply than he expected. Grant was not pretending he had done everything right. He was admitting where he failed. In front of everyone. The same man who could control a room with a single sentence was choosing to show responsibility instead. The former boyfriend looked around, realizing the room had changed. The people who had laughed earlier were no longer laughing. The employees who had questioned Micah were now looking at him differently. Not with pity, with respect. There is one more thing, Grant said. Everyone turned back. He stepped away from the screen and walked toward Micah. Not quickly, not dramatically, just deliberately. Micah Ellery did not need my name to create value. He fixed problems in this hotel before I even knew who he was. He designed the environment everyone here enjoyed. He earned respect before anyone knew he had mine. Grant stopped beside him. I am not standing here because he is connected to me. A pause. I am standing here because I am connected to him. The sentence settled over the room. Simple. Clear. A choice. Micah felt his eyes burn, but this time it was not humiliation. It was the strange feeling of finally being seen. Not saved. Seen. Later, after the meeting ended and people slowly left, Micah stood near the empty stage. The same stage where someone had planned to turn him into a joke. Grant approached, but he did not assume anything. He stopped a few feet away. I should have told you the truth sooner, Grant said. You should have had the choice. Micah looked at him. You did choose me today. Grant nodded. Yes. Even though it would have been easier not to. Especially because it would have been easier not to. For a moment, neither spoke. The hurt was still there. The trust was not magically repaired in one conversation. But something important had returned. Choice. Respect. The knowledge that when the world looked at Micah and saw a problem, Grant looked at him and saw a person. Micah smiled slightly. You know, for someone who runs an entire hotel, you are terrible at making things simple. A quiet laugh escaped Grant. The first real one Micah had ever heard from him. I have been told that. They stood there together, not pretending the past did not happen. Not rushing toward a future they had not earned yet. But for the first time, they were standing on the same side. Then Grant's phone vibrated. His expression changed as he read the message. Micah noticed immediately. What is it? Grant looked at the screen, then at him. The person who leaked the edited messages was not acting alone. Micah's smile faded. The truth had finally come out. His name had been restored. But the person behind everything was still hidden. And this time, they were not just trying to embarrass Micah. They were trying to destroy everything Grant had chosen to protect. The final investigation did not take long. Once the original records were reviewed, the truth became impossible to hide. The person behind the edited messages was not a mysterious enemy or a powerful stranger. It was Micah's former boyfriend, the same person who had created the birthday prank. He had been trying to control the story from the beginning. When the prank failed, he changed the narrative. When Micah left, he turned the situation into a rumor. When Grant protected Micah, he tried to make that protection look like a transaction. But the truth was already stronger than the lie. The hotel records showed what happened. The original files showed what happened. And most importantly, Micah finally stopped trying to convince everyone that he deserved respect. He simply stood there and let the truth speak. A few weeks later, the hotel hosted a new creative showcase. This time, Micah was not there as someone's guest, not as someone's boyfriend, not as the person connected to a powerful name. He was there because his work had been chosen. The entire lighting design was his vision. Every warm reflection, every carefully placed shadow, every detail that guided people through the space carried his signature. Standing in the finished room, Micah remembered the first night he had walked through those doors. Back then, he had entered hoping someone would choose him, hoping the person he loved would finally see his value. Now he understood something different. His value had never depended on who chose him. It had always been there. Grant found him near the edge of the room, watching guests admire the design. He did not interrupt immediately. He waited until Micah turned around. That small habit had become one of the things Micah noticed most about him. Grant no longer assumed he had the right answer. He asked. He listened. He waited. You did it, Grant said. Micah smiled slightly. We did not do it. I did. Grant looked surprised for a moment, then smiled. You are right. It was a small sentence. But Micah knew how much it meant. The old Grant would have tried to carry the weight himself. This Grant understood that loving someone meant allowing them to stand on their own. They walked through the room together. Not hidden. Not pretending. Not needing anyone else to understand before they understood each other. I have been thinking, Grant said. Micah glanced at him. That sounds dangerous. A quiet laugh escaped Grant. Probably. He stopped near the center of the room. When I met you, I thought I was protecting you because it was my responsibility. Then I thought I was protecting you because I cared about you. He paused. But I realized something. I do not want to stand beside you because you need someone powerful. I want to stand beside you because I respect who you are when nobody is watching. Micah looked at him carefully. This was not a dramatic promise, not a perfect speech. It was simply Grant finally showing the truth without hiding behind his reputation. You know I am still going to call you out when you try to solve everything alone, Micah said. I know, and I am still going to need honesty. You will have it. Micah smiled. Good. The answer was simple. Because simple things had become important. Trust. Choice. Respect. A few months later, Micah returned to the hotel for another project. This time, he walked through the lobby without lowering his eyes. Nobody whispered. Nobody questioned whether he belonged there. The same place where he once felt trapped had become the place where he was recognized. Before the event began, Grant showed him a small private room near the ballroom. Micah stopped when he saw the door. The memory was still there. The locked room. The laughter. The moment he thought he had lost everything. Grant noticed his expression. We can leave if you want. Micah looked at him. That was the difference. The door was not locked. The choice was his. He walked toward it and opened it himself. Inside was not a trap. It was a quiet space prepared for him to work, with his designs displayed on the walls. Proof of what he had created. Proof of who he was. Micah touched the edge of one of the designs and smiled. The first time he entered a private room connected to this hotel, he had been waiting for someone else to decide his worth. This time, he was walking in knowing it already. Grant stood beside him, not in front of him, not saving him, choosing him. And Micah finally understood that the greatest difference between being trapped and being loved was simple. One took away your choice. The other gave it back.